Should have go before 4:59. Okay, well, we're now we're live.
Here we are.
Okay, now people will probably start to join us because hey, wow, they're doing the pre-show. Anyway, so all right, so I don't know what. Everything's on.
As soon as I clicked on the little YouTube button in the top right corner, I see what it did. Never mind. It launched YouTube, and of course, auto played and turned on the sound. Because I assume, of course, I want to hear the show while I'm doing the show. Like,
of course,
of course, I want to monitor the show that I'm doing live. That makes a lot of sense.
Perfect.
Oh yeah. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
This is me fetching over user interface stuff.
Hey, this
Technology.
is what makes it interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
My best friend and greatest enemy.
This is a show about technology. So, all right, the way we open the show is we'll do a 3-shot like this.
Mm-hmm.
We'll say, our guest is George Washington III, and you go, hi. And then we talk, we yap for about 10 seconds, and we go into the intro. And then we come out of the intro, it's just George and I, and then I will introduce you, and you will come up, and we will take it from there.
Oh, you got it.
This is not scripted. This is live television. No teleprompter, no nothing.
Been there.
It's live radio with cameras turned on.
And live radio with cameras. Yeah. Well, in which case, all right, there'll be a barbecue at the.
It was supposed to be just an audio show. Remember, Dan?
Yeah, I don't remember why it was we decided to do this on camera, but
Well, because everybody was pivoting to video. Right.
that was 11 years ago, though.
I know.
We don't know. We didn't know what to do, honestly.
Yeah.
We didn't know how to do the show live streamed and be just video, just be audio. Everything was video.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the thing. There wasn't like an audio streaming platform. So
Pre-club. That's what, why Clubhouse went, and everybody went, oh my God, it's a thing, because there wasn't a thing before.
Right. Yeah.
Except
and now what is it now?
well, Clubhouse isn't going to last because they don't know how to monetize it.
Right.
That's
They don't
true.
know how to run ads because they can't interject ads into a
In the
live
middle of a
conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's got to be a
interesting.
subset of something else, which is why Twitter is like, yeah, we're going to do that and see how long you last.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I know.
Is Twitter gone to an audio format like that?
They
too?
have chat rooms just like that.
Wow.
Crazy.
Fascinating.
So
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I'm using Clubhouse for one reason. Well, I use it for one reason. I use it for an internal, like what I call office hours.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've been
Just
there.
say, hey, please come. Yeah. And then Jody does her podcast companion on Clubhouse, which I think is a good use of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's it. Those are the only times I'm going to load it up.
It's better than all the wealth people who are out there. Here's how you can grow your, stop.
That's what's going on there mostly
Right.
now, huh? It's become an audio banner ad,
Yeah.
an audio pop-up ad.
It was interesting when DDO was doing a fair amount of stuff out there. They were doing a lot of, hey, meet the agents, talk with the agents, and they were doing it on a weekly basis. I don't know if they're doing it anymore, but they were.
Yeah, like many things, it's lost momentum.
Yep.
It's lost momentum. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping the same thing will happen with AI, but
I don't think that's going to happen.
no. But we are thinking about it. I mean, it's going to be one of my major points to talk about when I'm at some of these conferences because it's just an issue made for our industry association more than anything else. But it's not going to go away. There are certain things that we could do, publicity wise, to really make a difference here, and that's get out and talk to these producers and say, all right, you cannot emulate the human mind.
Nope. And my thing, you've heard me say this before.
Yeah.
There is low-hanging fruit that will go away. It's just going to, because the quality need is not the same for all the things we do. Right. But some stuff, it's not going to happen, not for a while yet.
Right.
But I think on-hold messaging, give it a little time and it'll be gone.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think, and that's probably a good use for it. That and attention in the terminal. If someone tries to give you,
That's right.
I can accept an AI voice with that. I remember sitting in JFK last year and hearing two different announcements, and I'm like, clearly one was an AI voice and clearly one was an actual person saying, actually calling somebody, the pickup line, whatever, and that sort of thing.
You're just not going to know. Like in 2 to 5 years, you are not going to know which is the AI voice and which is the human. Maybe not for those kind of announcement stuff. You're not.
Yeah,
gonna know.
and that's okay.
There'll
It's
be
just going to be a
indistinction.
race to the bottom, and and that stuff's going to fall to the wayside. And what's going to make the difference is just being a really good voice actor.
Yeah. The cream will have to continue to rise to the top.
Yeah,
And it will. It will. Just like there's orchestras and live bands and live instruments used on television and film
right.
all the time. Even though there are synthesizers and samplers and talented software and music programmers that know how to program them, they're still the real thing. People still want to work with humans, hear humans, feel humans.
Yeah.
It's just, it's just that it is.
There's Mr. Holman. Jeffrey is in there. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Okay. Back to that. Boop. Boop out of chat.
I'm saying "Hey Jeff" live and typing it in the chat because
Just
He needs
just
to
to
make
make sure.
yeah,
Covering all bases.
he needs to make sure I really did say hey Jeff. he's our chat room mod. He makes sure that all of the questions from the Facebook and YouTube get answered on the show.
Okay. I see the big hand on the 12 and the little hand on the 5, and that's an indicator that we're ready to roll. Are
Yep.
you?
There's Sue's hand.
Okay. Got to use the flashlight.
Ready. Doesn't have one.
Okay.
5, 4, 3.
Hey, it's time for Voiceover Body Shop, and we've got a great guest tonight. When do we not have a great guest? This guy I particularly like because he's a great guy. George Washington III is our guest today. Say hi, George.
Hello, everybody.
There we
Hello,
go.
everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, you
join
meant
us-
the other guy. The other George. Sorry.
Yeah, the other George. It's going to be
That-
confusing for the next hour, so stay and pay
I'm the
really
tech.
tight attention.
Got it.
I'm
Okay.
the third.
Just call me the tech.
All right. All this. If you've got a question for George or for me, I said so. It's going to be GWIII and the other guy. And now stop that. It's time. It's time for Voiceover Body Shop right now.
Voiceover Body Shop is brought to you by VoiceOverEssentials.com, the home of Harlan Hogan's signature products. Source Elements, the folks who bring you Source Connect, JMC Demos, when quality matters. VOHeroes.com, become a hero to your clients with award-winning voiceover training. VoiceActorWebsites.com, where your voice actor website shouldn't be a pain in the butt. VoiceOver Extra, your daily resource for voiceover success. And by World Voices, the industry association of freelance voice talent. And now, here's your hosts, Dan and George.
Well, hello there. I'm Dan Leonard,
And I'm George Whittam.
and this is Voiceover,
Body Shop.
or VOBS.
BS.
Pump up your gain just a little bit there, George.
I need more gain all of a sudden?
You need more gain, and I neither need less. Or
I
whatever.
guess I was excited and now I'm like settled in and now I'm sort of calm again. So
There you go.
there's 3 more dB coming at you.
All right. Now we sound a little bit more even.
All right.
Okay. So, anyhow, fascinating. I was at a concert the other day at the Skirble, if you've ever been over there.
I still haven't been there.
Oh.
Is it a nice venue?
Oh, it's a beautiful venue, but we're sitting in the back row and everything sounded muffled.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought about it and I started cupping my ears and I'm like, I'm hearing the mix better now. Then I stood up and I heard the mix a little bit better then. And then I turned to Marcy and I'm like, we were in the back row. I said, let's go stand in front of the sound guy. And suddenly there was this magnificent sound. Because the speakers were too low, it was muffling everything.
Yeah.
If they raised them up 5 feet, it would have sounded fantastic.
The state of the art now is that they're all hung, and they have like this thing called a line array, right? So whenever you go to the Hollywood Bowl or this big, even in smaller venues, they will still even just hang 2 or 3 of those speakers because they don't need to throw as far. But that's the state of the art nowadays, and it really it improves the clarity in the back of the room.
Yeah. See, now that was going on, and I'm thinking, George would be throwing up by now.
Being picky about audio definitely makes going to live things harder, but the bar is being raised all the time. We went to see we went to see Inside Out, Pixar movie, being screened in a parking lot by UCLA for anybody that signed up online could get in. And it was a full 7.1 surround playback in a parking lot. And it was impressive. Like it was, you really got the full effect. I mean, I was like not expecting that in a parking lot. I was just expecting like stereo with some subwoofers. That would be fine. But it was rather impressive and a lot of fun. Especially because our pal Lori Allen is in that movie.
Oh, outstanding.
Yeah.
So anyhow, speaking of outstanding, we have an outstanding guest tonight. If you're interested in hearing about how to make your career different. And that's what we're all about here, is helping your voiceover career. We talk about the tech, but we have all these great guests who talk about how it is they got where they are. And every story is different. And then there's some stories that are kind of unique. But let me introduce our guest. George Washington III has a voice that stops listeners in their tracks and makes them pay attention. George is a full-time political voice actor. Why did I write political? Well, he does political stuff. But he's been a voice actor for over 17 years and helping clients communicate their stories. His voiceover work extends to radio and television, commercials, e-learning, corporate narration, and telephony, or telephony, depending on how you say that. And he provides solutions for clients all over the U.S. and all over the world. Let's welcome to VoiceOver Body Shop, George Washington III.
Good afternoon/evening, gentlemen.
Good to see you. We'll just refer to you as GWIII, because when we email, that's what I call it.
Pretty common. That's pretty common.
Okay, so I'm not being original or anything.
Oh no, see, I worked in restaurants and stuff where they'd call me Jorgito. Let's see, GWIII. Yes, I was. My family called me Little George because my dad. So yeah, just whatever works.
I had the same problem in my family. I was the Little George as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just known as Hey You. Anyway, you're like me. You're involved in all sorts of things, and including World Voices, voiceover, education, opera. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you arrived at all of these things.
Yeah, what came first, opera or voice acting?
Yeah.
Opera did. So first, my background when I was in college, I was a vocal performance major for a while. I ended up with a Bachelor of Arts in Music. And then I went into what do I do with this? And I went into IT. And so I worked on PCs, installing PCs, fixing computers, fixing software, supporting users. And I started working for First Union National Bank in Charlotte, North Carolina in 1998. And during that work, I got on an elevator with a woman named Elizabeth Taylor. So George Washington III and Elizabeth Taylor were on an elevator together.
Sounds like a setup for a joke.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Where's this going?
Well, and she asked me, hey, do you want to be the on-camera host for a couple of internal videos? And I said, sure, why not? And so I started doing that in addition to my IT work. And in one of those instances, I had to go to a local studio and record the voiceover for what we were doing. And walking around this studio, it was just the people were so nice, and this is they had some voiceover work things going on. And I said, hey, what would I need to do if I wanted to do voiceover? And they said, well, bring us scripts. We'll help you make your demos, and we'll go from there. And it was, how demos cost. It was $350.
Wow.
So I went off for 6 months and practiced and did that thing that I tell no one ever to do again. I did it without coaching. I went back and I made a narration demo and a commercial demo, and then started getting it around. And that was about 2003 or so. So I've continued on working in IT and working in things and doing voiceover on the side, and eventually was able to move to the point where I said, you know what, this is what I do in its entirety. As an opera singer, so I started singing with Opera Carolina in Charlotte in 1998. And I'm mostly in the chorus, but I did have small roles. And when we do the really small things like Amal and the Night Visitors, I was one of the kings and things like that. And one of the nice things is like, hey, could you come do our phone messages for us? So I do the phone messages for the opera company, and I do the in-house announcement, basically to say, here is our primary sponsor, and don't use flash photography. So,
you just
even
kept
when
saying
I
yes.
sing, exactly.
You just kept saying yes. Yeah. I
If you're going to pay me to do something, that is using my voice, generally, I'm going to say yes. But so I kept doing that and continued to do voiceover and keep trying to grow what I do. My goal was to make my living with my voice, and that's where we've gone. And things have reached the point where that's what I can actually do.
That's great. Once again, our guest is George Washington III. As the discussion goes on, if you have a question for him, throw it in the chat room, whether you're on Facebook Live or whether you're on YouTube or wherever you might be watching this. But you can ask him a question. We will get to that in our next segment, because I know Jeff Holman is in there with his feathered quill writing down these questions and then holding them up to us, and so we can see what those questions are.
That's some 21st century tech right there.
It is.
The feathered quill.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's only doing it for you, George Washington.
Forsooth.
Anyway, now you do it all. You do commercials, including political spots, e-learning, corporate narration. With so much competition out there now, and you've been doing it online for about 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
When we first started 20 years ago, it was like, okay, it was kind of easy pickings for a lot of work. Now it's a totally different marketplace. How have you been able to differentiate yourself? What, as I like to say, what's your competitive point of difference that that getting people's attention?
Yeah, I like to say that my competitive advantage is my versatility, and I will do pretty much whatever kind of work there is. I don't do audiobooks just from a timing perspective, and I know that is an entirely different work world than I'm used to doing. And I've done a handful. I've just decided that's not where I want to be professionally. But I play up my versatility. I speak about my background as having an artistic background beyond just being a voice actor, and I make it really easy to work with me, right? And so I want people to know that if you're going to ask me for this thing, I will have it back in time. I will have it back so that you can make changes. I will make it. If you want to be here while I do it, you can be here while I do it. I've actually, most of the time we're doing it remotely, whether that's Zoom or whatever. But earlier this year, I did a narration for talking about the Rosenwald schools in the Southeast. And the Rosenwald schools were schools that were built throughout the Southeast with support from the then president of Sears Roebuck, because at that time, those schools for African-American students were not being supported by their local governments. And Julius Rosenwald put money aside and had people contribute and build these schools. So when they asked me to do the narration, I was like, sure. And the person who was there said, can we come and listen? And I'm like, sure. Right. And, this is not like I don't have a huge studio set up or anything. So they sat out on the couch. The gentleman and his wife sat on the couch, and I turned on the monitors and I did what I needed to do. And the next time he's like, I've heard it. You're fine. I can do it over, Google Meet next time. I also, like, when I say I'll do whatever they ask, for the second version of that for South Carolina, they said, can you do on camera for us? And I'm, on camera is not a problem for me. So I drove down to Newberry, South Carolina, and I did the walk up and spoke the lines off teleprompter, gestured to the place, and then the next week we came back and did the actual narration. So I try to give them all the options and let them know what I'm fully capable of. Singing, everything.
Yeah. How do you do your marketing? I'm going to assume you have several different tools in your toolkit.
Well, I will admit I'm not the greatest at marketing. That I'm not. I have done less of it than I would intend to, but most of that's because getting ramped up and getting into doing things fully.
Right.
But I have been poking my toe into the LinkedIn process and doing those things and using LinkedIn as a process. I am pretty active on social media, but I don't point at the social media to make it say, okay, I do voiceover, please hire me. Because that doesn't really tend to have a ton of get back. Most of it is just establish that I am a known quantity, help the SEO, show people that what I'm capable of. I mean, the stuff that I'm doing right now, I read poems, right? I do poetry where I read it. I say it's the hashtag is 1 minute of poetry, and I do if the poem is, sometimes it's over a minute, but most of the time it's a minute or less, I will do a reading and I will post it, and I just point out here's something that I can do, and I hashtag it with voiceover as well. And so it's more of a, hey, I have these other gears too. And make people understand that, yes, if you need to do hard sell, I can do that. I can do this sports sell. But this kind of read where I'm making something into a conversation based on, on this poetic lines, those things work too. So I do have things like I use Close as my CRM, which lets you do some real organized, send the emails out and makes it a little easier. It can interface with MailChimp, and I'm working through how to make that happen with what I do. I have done some cold calling, but cold calling isn't my favorite. Like, there are some people who are great at it. It's not my best thing.
Yeah, that's a tough one for a lot of people, is cold calling.
Yeah.
It's like, that's just sales 101.
Yeah. Exactly. But, part of the way I look at it, for most people, especially when people are starting out, I'm saying, make sure you know who the recording studios in your local area are. Find out who they are, and if they have a roster, then go talk to them. Go talk to them. Don't reach out to them personally. Go speak to them and see what you can do for them. I have clients here in town where they don't audition me anymore. They just, for a lot of things, they do send auditions, but many times they're like, hey, we have this thing for you. Can you come in and do it? And that way they are, they are part of my normal, here are the people I can count on.
Right.
So,
yeah.
That seems like a sign in a career that spans some time where when you get to that point where you can fill in a lot of your day with just reliable client content that they just keep coming back to you, and you don't feel like you're in a constant state of gotta hustle for the next gig, That's got to be a good feeling.
It is. And, that doesn't mean that I don't hustle for it. Obviously, I get my auditions and I try and get them in and make sure everything is done when necessary. But it does help to know that here's a level that I know is going to be here. And then I continue to work on the rest of it to try and grow that. I'm not being greedy, just trying to make a living. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're just trying to make a living. That's the most important part. Once again, we're talking with George Washington III. If you have a question with him or for him or about him, throw it in the chat room. We'll get to that in just a little bit. So once you get a client, it's important to make them a client. you've discussed the ways that you do that. That once you land a gig, you make them a client for life by making their life easier, and that's clearly what you're saying. How have you been getting most of your work? How do you get the initial work?
So initially it was through production houses. Before I made an effort to reach out to agents. And so I worked with production houses and got work through them, built up basically a book of business saying, here's what I'm capable of and here's what I've done, then reached out to agents. And I have multiple agents at this point. I have representation across the country, though I'm not specifically represented in the giant markets. That's kind of the next move from a representation standpoint. Right. But I have a lot of people who are doing, that I get work from. And again, I don't win them all. No one does. I try and remind those people who are starting out, you're going to win 1 to 2% of them. That's the way it works. And so you have to make sure that you are getting work from enough people that 1 or 2% isn't going to kill you by not having it available to you. That's just the way this work is. It is acting. It is people you're competing with a ton of people. And I know a lot of us say we're not competing. Yeah, we're not strictly saying you or me. It is that in the end, but that's not how we have to function. Right. I look at it as I have always told people this is not a rejection business. It's a selection business. And most of the time you're not going to get selected. You have to keep building it up so that more people do select you. And once they select you, they decide to come back to you over and over again. And that means being available. That means being easy to work with.
Consistent.
Yeah. And every single time. Now, when you and I first met, that's a good 10 years ago, I think, probably at FAFCON, and I found out you were an opera singer. And we usually will get into talking about operas, one particular opera or another. I've done a little bit of Gilbert and Sullivan and stuff. But have you found that opera singing really helped your career? I mean, is there something in singing in a very formal way like that helped you understand how to, obviously how to use your voice, but projecting is not really what they want anymore. And opera is definitely projecting because you're not mic'd or anything.
Right. Exactly. That is the thing, is you're not necessarily using that particular skill, that projection. You have electronics. That's not the job. That's not the job anymore.
Right.
But you do learn how to breathe. And it is such a core need for what we do, being able to diaphragmatically breathe and not make it a big deal, right? That is a skill that most people simply don't have when they come into it. And there's not a reason for them to have it, right? Unless they've been in a situation where projection is what they have to do. But then you have to work off the other parts of that projection, right? Stage actors who project, like, okay, remember, this room is a whole lot smaller. That's not where you're trying to go. You're not trying to push to the back of the room anymore. Right. So I think opera helped in, one, getting your breathing right, and you do have some acting that goes along with it, but you got to tamp it back a little bit because it is awfully large, right? You don't do small things on an opera stage. You're going to be big, right?
Right, exactly.
And so learning how to take emotion from something like music and then transfer that to the people who are watching, you're still doing that, but you're just doing it by doing it in speech. On a more kind of blatant space about how opera helps, I do get singing jobs now and again, where you'll see auditions that say we need an operatic sound. I'm like, hey, I'm ready. I think my favorite one for that so far has been one I did for Fruit by the Foot. And the audition came in and they just said, hey, how long can you hold a note? And I said, how long do you need me to hold it? Right. And they said, well, send us an audition and just hold it as long as you can. And I sent it, and they said, well, we don't need That's what I've got then. So I ended up just saying fruit by the foot for about 8 or 9 seconds. Just hold it as long as they need it. Give it long enough so that they could use a fade. That was the whole point of it.
They didn't believe you could hold it for a minute or something.
Exactly. So, there are everyone, and just because that kind of jingle, that kind of singing isn't as important, don't see that in a commercial as much. But I think 2 weeks ago I did another one that was just just 3 notes, for this thing. Same kind of idea, but I have that gear if somebody needs it. Right. So, that's what,
now it's all
why
about
I point
short,
out that
little short sound bites, right?
Exactly.
My jingle might be 3 notes.
Exactly. And having that, and that can be any singer, right? I mean, if you know how to sing and you can get those 3 notes, you're in good shape. I like, because it is a particular style, and people know when people do that, there's this, it's usually in terms of, it's going to be a parody. It's meant to be funny. Then I got that, I don't need to do the entire Toreador song for anybody just for a commercial. So.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially when they're beginning, and George and I get a lot of audio from people. One of the things we notice is people breathing in the middle of sentences, which, drives me nuts. It's like, if you can't read an entire sentence without taking a breath, you got a problem. I mean, there are people out there that, that we probably all know. It's like they will talk and talk and talk, and you'll go, take a breath. Shut up for a second. But practicing, as you were saying, diaphragmatic breathing, it's really important to be able to read 1 or even 2 sentences without taking a breath, and which, saves an awful lot of time with editing and stuff like that.
It does. But I think what happens for a lot of people is if you're not prepping, and that doesn't mean you necessarily have to go line by line and look at every line and do all those things, but you got to get your eyes ahead of the text enough to know that I'm not going to have, I have all of this text to say. So I need to get a good breath when I start. I need that 2 seconds or 3 seconds of diaphragmatic breathing before I get into this, so I can do those first 2 sentences before I actually need a breath. And recognize that you can take those things out, right? You don't, it's not necessary to get to the point where you're like, right, when you've read all the way to the end of your breathing.
I've heard it, though.
Yeah, I've heard it too. And I try not to let that become a habit with me, because every once in a while you're going and you're in a flow and you're like, okay, stop, go back to the beginning of that paragraph and start that again with a good breath, so it doesn't feel like you're running out by the time you get to the end. Yeah. That happens in not just audiobooks, long form narration and e-learning and that sort of thing. When you run into people who don't write to be spoken and they're writing to be read, exactly. I actually write back to people when I get copy and it's clear that they wrote it for me to read out loud. I'm like, thank you so much for being considerate of how this actually works.
Absolutely. Once again, we're talking with George Washington III. We're talking about his voiceover career and some of the cool stuff. If you've got a question, again, throw it in the chat room, whether you're on Facebook Live or whether you're on YouTube Live, and we will get that question to him in just a couple of minutes. Now, one of the areas that you've been active in the last few years is the subject of diversity in media. Can you tell us what you think about the current state of affairs and how you think it can be changed, and really what brought your attention to this?
Well, clearly, as a person of color, there's always an interest in what diversity is and how we can be a part of what's going on. And there is, and this is just reality, there has up to this point been a baseline acceptance that the default voice is a white male voice. And that has been the way it works, unless it was advertising that was focused directly at the black community or Hispanic community, and that would be the only kind of voice that you could use unless you're really speaking to that area. But in the last few years, we've seen the growth of the use of different kinds of voices that are considered for general consumption, right? And that is a good thing. It's It's good to grow. It's going to be happening more and more. It's not just a matter of ethnicity anymore, as I'm sure people have seen non-binary postings, and I know that some people say, well, what does that even mean? That is up to the listener and up to the people who are doing the casting to say, does that sound like a non-binary voice? But I think that's all to the good. We are getting better at this. I think the industry is getting better at it, of recognizing that we need to hear the speech of more than one kind of person if you're reaching out to advertise, influence, get people to do what you would like. More people who can hear it in a voice that sounds familiar to them will be more beneficial to your message. And I think that has been a point that we have gotten better and better, and we can continue to improve as that happens. We've seen this with female voices in spaces that we traditionally didn't hear them, in sports, in automotive. That is starting to happen. That's a good thing, to make sure that that representation is happening across the board.
Yeah, I totally agree. Once again, if you got a question for George about any one of these topics, throw it in the chat room, and we will get to that in just a second. You and I are working on a project together because we haven't been able to do this in a couple of years. We both serve on the board of World Voices, and one of the things that we've wanted to do is get our annual conference back together, and we've not been able to do it, obviously, because of the pandemic. But we got one planned for Orlando next May, so it's less than a year. And you're in charge of this. I'm standing back, waiting for whatever it is you need me to do. Tell us a little bit more about what we're thinking about here.
So WovoCon, as you mentioned, is an important part of the World Voices community, in that this group of people should be organized around one of the main principles that we have for the organization, which is members helping members. And part of that commitment to members helping members should be face-to-face, meeting the people that were also in the organization, sharing of knowledge so that people all understand that their needs can also be met by other people in the industry who have similar experience. Not everyone has all the answers, but everyone has some answers. And we want to make sure that that is part of what we offer as an organization. And WovoCon, like many conferences, disappeared for a while due to the pandemic. I have specific experience with the whole pandemic and what kind of impact it can have on a life. And we did what was necessary. And we also had run into a situation where we had done it for 7 years or 6 years, and we had kind of tapped out on the people who had been organizing, and it's hard work. And we looked at it this year and said, we need to bring this back as a part of what we do to be of value to our members. And we want people to be able to come there, share their knowledge, get new knowledge, and be reminded that they are not alone. Because what we do is such an isolating business, in that we are working in boxes like these for long periods of time. And it's nice to be able to have those moments to talk with people and know that there is a shared community there. Now, we are different from the other conferences in that this is not, one, it's not a money-making venture for us, and it is specifically for our membership. And so we like to think that that sets us apart from the others. Not that anyone is any worse or better, but this is for us. And I believe that that's a positive thing that we can offer to our membership.
Yeah. And on that note, we're gonna start to take a break here in just a second. But George, great having you with us. And again, if anybody has a question for him about any of the stuff that we're talking about, throw it in the chat room, because we love hearing from you and knowing that you're out there and watching our show and paying attention to what's going on out in the voiceover world. And George is one of those guys that's like really in there, in the trenches, doing what it takes. Anyway, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with George Washington III right after these important messages. Don't go away.
This is the Latin lover narrator from Jane the Virgin, Anthony Mendez, and you're enjoying Dan and George on the Voiceover Body Shop.
Well, hello there. I bet you weren't expecting to hear some big-voiced announcer guy on your new orientation training for Snapchat, were you?
This is Virgin Radio. Well, okay, we're not that innocent.
There's jeans for wearing and there's jeans for working. Dickies, because I ain't here to look pretty.
She's a champion of progressive values, a leader for California, and a voice for America.
It's smart. It's a phone. It's a smartphone. But it's so much more. The files are ready. Don't forget to pick up the eggs. What time is hockey practice? Check out this song.
It's the end of the road for Rick.
Just you and me, Rick.
When hope is lost.
The i8 from BMW. Who said saving the planet couldn't be stylish?
Hey, it's J. Michael Collins. Bet you think I'm going to try and sell you a demo now, huh? I think they speak for themselves. But I will give you my email. It's jmichael@jmcvoiceover.com. Now, if Dan will stop waxing his mustache for a minute, we'll get back to the show.
Inflated prices? Not at voiceoveressentials.com. Despite the nationwide inflation rate of over 8%, VoiceOver Essentials refuses to raise prices. In fact, they refuse to even say the I word. Their inventory is large on all their products, and they purchased them before the current economic conditions. It's simply wrong to increase profit as many retailers are doing right now. So Harlan & Company promised not to raise their prices during difficult times for everyone. They'll stay the course, steady and sure, flat and firm, solid and steadfast. Okay, enough. You get the point. Unfortunately, they're under the same inflationary pressures as everyone else, and they'll need to restock in the not-so-distant future. No doubt there'll be sticker shock for them and you. So, right now is the time to order that Portabooth Pro or VO1A voiceover microphone and their VO 2.0 headphones. Fight inflation at voiceoveressentials.com.
Hey there, it's David H. Lawrence the 17th. I teach a curriculum called VO Heroes Pro. Close to 40 classes on voiceover, performance, the business, the technology, the mindset. And with all those courses, I'm sure there are still things that I don't teach. And I'd love to know, if you wouldn't mind helping me out, what you'd like to learn. Is there something that has always puzzled you about our business, or something you just don't know about, or something that you wish you had a better take on? Go to voheroes.com/survey. There's a one-question survey waiting for you, and that is, what would you like to know? I'd love to teach it. So, voheroes.com/survey. That's voheroes.com/survey. Let me know what I can teach you, and I thank you.
This is Bill Ratner, and you're enjoying VoiceOver Body Shop with Dan Leonard and George Whittam. VOBS.TV.
And we are back with George Washington III here on VoiceOver Body Shop. Again, if you got a question for him, throw it in the chat room. Plenty of time to do that as well. Let's see here. We got one question here starting off from Terry Briscoe. He says, I've done 6 different categories of voiceover in my first year. Everyone says that you should focus on an area that you're starting out, as you just said. You're someone who's known for their versatility. Do you subscribe to that philosophy? Why or why not? Clearly, you've spread yourself out in a lot of places.
So, Terry, the way I look at it is, do all kinds of stuff when you're starting out, so that if you decide I'm going to focus on one, you know which one of those things you can focus on, because you are going to have to find out if some of those things are things you like or not, right? If you start out right now, for instance, and say, well, I'm going to focus on audiobooks. Well, that's great. You better like audiobooks, right? My take on it has always been, do all the things until there's a reason to do only one of the things. It gives me the opportunity to try a lot of different things, to do different kinds of genres, to do different kinds of characters and all that. And it leaves me less vulnerable to when you lose a thing and then everything else collapses around it. So it's I say try a lot of things, do a lot of different kinds of things. Some people will say that's not the right direction. It's worked for me.
Right, and that's really what counts. I know a lot of times when I'm talking to people when they're just starting out, my question to them is, "What's your superpower? What is it that you do professionally now or are escaping from?" Because I've met a lot of recuperating chiropractors and podiatrists
and
IT people who are, if you have knowledge of that area. I mean, when you started doing voiceover, it was because you were in the business that needed you to do that. And, but if somebody's an expert in IT or military intelligence, I've heard that one, or was a priest or something along those lines, it's amazing where the opportunities are if you have that knowledge and that network to work with.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that I say to people starting out is once you have professional demos, tell everyone you know, everyone. Things will come from the most random places. I will give you a strange example. So when I started out in Charlotte, I was also doing on-camera work. I was doing some on-camera commercials and all that while being in IT too. So that didn't work out so much. But I had an agent here in town. Since we are no longer working together as agent and client, we're still in contact. I have sung at her mother's, sister's, and unfortunately her husband's funerals. But when I sang at the last one, that was where I met the gentleman who had me do this most recent series of documentaries. Because they heard me sing, we did the work, we talked real briefly. They reached out to me later and said, "We think you're the right person to do these documentaries." Tell everyone, tell them all the time. And one of the things I also say is, don't ever tell them you're aspiring. You are a voice actor.
Right? You are a professional.
Yep. Once you have professional, real demos, you are a voice actor. Don't give them a reason to think, well, you're just new into this and starting on. This is what you do.
Yeah. George, you got a question there?
Yeah, I wanted to know more about the tech in your studio. What are the tools that you like to use? We obviously see your mic, but there's something going on that mic arm I wanted to talk about. And then just tell us about the rest of all the things we can't see in your frame.
So I have this Neumann TLM 103 here. I also have, and I'll swing it into the camera a little bit here. I also have this shotgun mic, the Sennheiser 416. And as you noted, I have them on this swing arm here in this Studio Bricks booth. My interface is an Apollo Twin Duo, a Mark II. My M1 Mac Mini is sitting outside, and so it runs everything else in here. And I have another monitor sitting outside, so I have two monitors to work on. And if I'm going to do any kind of editing, because occasionally I make videos and whatnot, and I run Premiere out there, so I can edit on a larger screen, on a 35-inch screen. Mm-hmm. And yeah, this is the Studio Bricks VO edition. I put a keyboard tray in here so that I can just sit here and type as well. And so that is, in general, that's my basic setup.
Got it. Do you have a mirrored setup where like the monitor inside the booth is an identical mirror of what's outside the booth? Is that how you run it?
Actually, this is like I run my DAW and my scripts are happening here, and out there is a secondary. It is a different display entirely. So I drag things back and forth. Like if I go out there to work, I just drag the windows over to that side and I work on that screen.
Cool.
So, and I use, as a DAW, I use Audition.
Adobe Audition. Do you find that with the Apollo? I mean, we've talked about the Apollo many times, and we have our pros and cons about it. But do you really feel like you take advantage of the tools that the Apollo provides, or do you feel like you just use it on a more basic level that doesn't differentiate it that much from other interfaces?
I'm going to pump you up here because that was why I signed up. I know that's not the intention, but I'm going to say it anyway. That is why I signed up for your webinar, because I do feel like right now I'm not using it to its fullest extent. One of the reasons, like, I need to understand. I wanted to understand the virtual inputs better. I wanted to understand how it works and what I can do differently. I mean, honestly, one of the things I enjoy the most about having it here is it's right here on hand, and I can make your quick adjustments right there. I had a full mixer before, but it couldn't sit here close at hand, and I had to reach under to do stuff. So this made that easier. And I did sign up for your webinar because I want to know more about how to use it better. I do have that thing working on. Now, I use a couple of, like I use loopback for routing so that I can move things from one to the other. Like if I'm doing playback for somebody, it makes it easy to go right into the playback and all that. But I want to know more about my interface. And I think it's important for voice actors to know those things. They don't have to be you, obviously, but they should know more about the things they're doing, not necessarily because they're going to offer all of these grand things. Like most of us don't have to do full production. We're delivering dry lines, but it's a good idea to know what it's capable of. For instance, like in Audition, most of us will never use or very rarely use multitrack, but occasionally you might have to listen to some music while you do your record and know how that works. And you can just put that in multitrack and hit record and record against what's happening there. And then just, mix down just your lines, and there you go. Yeah.
And you can have video too. You can drag a video right into and have the video on screen and work with
exactly.
pictures.
So you need to know a little. You need to know enough to be dangerous, I guess is the best way to put it. And that's why I want to know more about that interface, because I want to know what's the best way for me to use it, especially since I have two microphones connected to those outputs. What's the easiest way to switch back and forth? Because Audition looks at that piece of hardware, instead of those inputs per se. So being better about doing that, I think it's important to know all that.
Yeah. Why would you use the 102 or the 103 versus the 416?
Good question.
Well, some of it is because I've done video games, right? And they generally don't want the 416 for mixing purposes, or at least that's what they say. Now, you and I both know that some of the reasons they say that is gatekeeping, right? It's because they're saying, hey, we only want this kind of microphone, and they'll say it's a 103 or a U87. I'm like, yeah. Most of us are not having U87s hanging around in our studio, but I like last year I did a few video games, and I do a lot of stuff where the 416 is like my home base. And I personally wanted to say, you're not going to tell me the reason I didn't get hired is because I didn't have this available to me, right? Exactly. And so if it is because if I didn't do what I needed to do, that's fine. But it's not going to be because I didn't have the equipment for what was necessary.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of somebody not getting the job because they say, "Well, I've got this type of microphone." If you sound good, well, as we like to say on the show, you are good. And so it's not really the microphone. But there is a distinct difference between the 103 and the 416. I mean,
yes,
one is they both work differently at different proximities and stuff like that. But clearly the 103 is a lot mellower for a voice like, let's say, yours or mine.
Definitely, that is my description is the 416 is sharper, and it's sharper and brighter. And for a lot of things, it's ideal for what I want to do. But you wouldn't say if you're gonna do an audiobook, you wouldn't necessarily say that's your best choice because it is a little more ear fatiguing. But I would say, you don't have to do this setup, and a lot of people never need more than one microphone. I just like to be able to have that option because I've done different kinds of things like video game stuff. When they said, hey, we want this one to match what we've already got, here you go, I'm ready to go.
Right.
You like to be able to say yes.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Now Terry Briscoe's asking, what is that swing arm? I must know. Well, I mean, I've got a couple of those sitting around for displaying my ribbon mics and stuff. You can get those like at Guitar Center or on Amazon real easily. Right?
Yeah, this swing arm I got for $12 on Amazon, and it, you know, the arm that comes with this booth is usually set for a single mic mount, but I wanted to be able to switch back and forth without doing any unplugging, and so I went and found this mic arm, and like I said, it was $12, went right in the same place where you would normally put one microphone, and I will even do this here.
It's called a T-bar. So if you're searching, look for a mic T-bar or a stereo bar or something like that.
I mean, you can literally put 3 mics on that thing if you wanted to.
You probably could, yeah.
And it works as easily as that, right? Just a simple switch, and there you have it.
There you go. Now you can hear the difference between those 2 mics. It's kind of cool to hear the difference in that space.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, George, you got the question from J. Horace Black.
Jay. Hey, Jay. Any quick pointers you can give an opera singer who wants to do voiceover? Do you do any coaching specifically for opera singers?
So here's what I say. Opera singers have an advantage. And most singers have an advantage because you already know how to breathe. You already know how to take basically what I will call vague direction. Because you have been told you need to give different kinds of feelings, emotions, and all those sorts of things. So you are coming in armed already. Any voiceover coach, I think, would be pleased to have somebody who already knows what it means to put emotion in their performance. And that you can go to anyone. It doesn't necessarily have to be a specific one who's going to work from opera to voiceover. You are working with an advantage already. It doesn't mean that suddenly people are going to hire you faster, but it does mean that you are going to be able to take direction better because you're used to it already. It's just applying it in a different space. So I don't know that there's any specific direction that you have to take or the specific coaching you have to get as someone coming from an operatic background into voiceover. You have to know to tamp down your projection. You can work on that and be able to take direction that seems not specific, right? You've been told to sound taller. You already know what that feels like, right? And so you can work on that sort of thing without having to do a lot of processing, because most everybody knows that people don't know what they want until they hear it.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to say, "Oh, I need to hear this." Angela Brown. Do I know Angela Brown? I think we were in we may have been in Porgy and Bess together here in Charlotte some years ago. So yeah, it just takes you being open to direction, and you have that going in. So I think that's the positive nature for voiceover for people coming from music, particularly opera. You know what emotion is in your performance.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah.
He had a second part that went technical. Should we talk about that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it was about your Apollo and how you're using it. I happen to know
Apollo
he has
is
one. Are you
basically
using
naked.
Yeah, you're not using any no unison plugins, no C-suite, noise reduction, none of that fancy stuff.
Yeah,
Got it.
mine is as is at the moment. And so again, one of the things I wanted to do was learn how to use it better, see if there's any value to that for me. But thus far, I've had no complaints about the things that I've been able to produce. So, and I think Dan is very much a believer in microphone interface software, right?
Yeah. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I actually had a question about WovoCon too, another one. And then Karen asked about the dates again. So we can repeat the dates for WovoCon. But what does make that conference unique? I mean, I've been there, so I know, obviously. But what does make it, what differentiates it from the other big conferences happening?
So I think one of the main differentiators for us is we do have speakers. We will have people come in and do keynotes and that sort of thing. But the individual things that are taught there are taught by the people who are members of WoVo. Those people who are willing to share their knowledge in that setting and say, I have this, you need this. Here's what we're doing. Nobody's selling. our own people are not selling to our members. They are sharing their knowledge freely and trying to give, and we've heard this in every kind of conference, sharing those nuggets to say, here's some information for you to take back. We ask our membership, where, do you have something you want to teach? Let us know. Tell us what you want to talk about, and we can put you on the roster of instructors. So that's what I think makes us a little bit different. We're not there to sell you any more than what we've got coming in. This is for us to share. I mean, one of the things we do on the Sundays is we have the family meeting, right? We talk about the industry, where we're going as an organization, what we want to be doing in the coming years, and make everyone want to be a part of this and contribute to it for the greater good of the industry and the organization.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. Is we are an industry association. This is a not-for-profit organization. We're not, as George was saying, we're not there trying to make money off of this, because, as George and I will tell you, we're not making any money off of it. We're doing this because it's important to the industry. So that's why we want people there. It's because it's fun. It's great to meet the other people in your community, and of course exchange ideas and stuff. And a lot of that goes on in the lobby and out in the hallway, and that's what makes it such a fun conference. And because it's not commercial the way a lot of these other ones. It's not like, here's 10 agents who are going to tell you how to do this stuff. No, here's a bunch of other voice actors in our organization who tell you how they do things, sort of like what we're talking about right now.
And that's not to say we don't have agents involved, right? We do have some agents involved with us, but they're not there to sell. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And it's going to be May 3rd, 4th, 5th?
4th, 5th, and 6th.
4th, 5th, 6th next year.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're going to celebrate May the 4th be with you.
Yes.
And Cinco de Mayo that same weekend. Talk about a party.
Yeah. And
bring your lightsabers.
And a birthday.
My birthday.
Yes, and his birthday. So.
In Orlando, Florida. Let's make sure we understand where we're going to be.
We're already in Orlando. So can't wait to do this. Now, somebody's asking, when will the demo be ready to use? Demo player ready to use? I'm really excited about this, and I thank you for providing it. It's going to be ready probably this week. People have been testing it. We got all the bugs out of it. It's definitely gonna be hitting the main road this week.
So we know what we're talking about. So World Voices, as one of our benefits for membership, is we are providing a demo player that you can use on your website, and it is HTML5 based, as I believe is the word. It plugs right in. It's just a bit of code. It adds your demos, and they can be played back, and you don't have to invest in anything. And that's part of what we're doing to offer our membership as a thing. And we're going to be improving it as we go. We've actually talked about here are the features we'd like in the future.
Absolutely. Well, George, it's always just a pleasure to talk to you no matter what. But thank you so much for being with us on our show today, and we really appreciate all of your knowledge, and we look forward to having you on again real soon. If people want to get a hold of you, where do they go?
I am at voevolution.com. That is my website, to be rebuilt soon, but voevolution.com is where you can find me.
You don't need to rebuild it. It works great. It's one of the best websites I've seen. Anyway, George Washington III, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All righty.
See you, George.
All right. We will be right back and get ready to wrap it up and re-rack it for Tech Talk right after these messages.
Yeah, hi, this is Carlos Alazraqui, the voice of Rocco, and you're watching Voiceover Body Shop.
In these modern times, every business needs a website. When you need a website for your voice acting business, there's only one place to go. Like the name says, voiceactorwebsites.com. Their experience in this niche webmaster market gives them the ability to quickly and easily get you from concept to live online in a much shorter time. When you contact voiceactorwebsites.com, their team of experts and designers really get to know you and what your needs are. They work with you to highlight what you do. Then they create an easily navigable website for your potential clients to get the big picture of who you are and how your voice is the one for them. Plus, VoiceActorWebsites.com has other great resources, like their practice script library and other resources to help your voiceover career flourish. Don't try it yourself. Go with the pros. VoiceActorWebsites.com, where your VO website shouldn't be a pain in the you-know-what.
It's time to thank Source Elements because they are still supporting VOBS after all these years, at least 5 or more. And at this point, boy, you know what Source Connect is, right? Yes, you probably do, right? You've been watching the show. You've been listening to others in the voiceover community talk about it. And there's no doubt that it's well loved. In fact, some minor proof of how much people appreciate Source Connect and Source Elements is they just won an award. They just won an award at One Voice Conference and got Best Service Provider for the voiceover industry, which is amazing. It was weird because I was in the same category. So, I mean, I'm honored to have lost to Source Elements, because these guys are the real deal. And they've been serving audio industry and voiceover industry specifically for as long as I have, if not longer. They've been there really since the beginning almost of the home studio revolution, honestly. Anyway, I won't go on. You guys know who they are. Go, if you haven't needed it yet, then you probably have your demo license already. If you don't, go over to source-elements.com and get your demo and start playing with it. Start getting used to how it works and learning why it's what producers really prefer to use in voiceover productions. We'll be right back right after this.
You're still watching VOBS?
Apparently you are. Anyway, we're going to re-rack it for Tech Talk here in just a minute. So if you've got questions about home voiceover studio tech, which I know that's one of the reasons you guys come here, throw those in the chat room as well. If you got a problem or a question or something along those lines, we will get to that in the next hour. Anyway, so next week, it'll be Tech Talk number 85. Or if you're staying live, like you should, you'll be able to play along with us here. Let's see here. What else we got going on here? You've got a webinar for Twisted Wave coming up.
Yeah, this time I'm doing audiobooks. So I've taught Twisted Wave for just sort of general beginners, more advanced, and now audiobooks because, well, anybody knows that records audiobooks. There's a lot of minutia and a lot of organization and workflow to be really efficient. So I'll be teaching that. You can sign up for that at georgethe.tech/webinars. And while you're there, right underneath the big banner or the picture of me on it and stuff, right below there's a raffle copter. What the heck is that? You can sign up and be entered to win a free webinar pass to whatever webinar that you want. You just follow the prompts on there and you can share it with your followers, and that's how it works. The more you share, the more tickets you get, essentially. So check it out.
Cool.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. We've got our donors of the week, large pile of them, starting with 949 Designs. That's our good friend Lee Pinney.
That is. Jonathan Grant.
Casey Clack.
Christopher Epperson.
Sarah Borges.
Philip Sapir.
Tom Pinto.
Shelley Avellino.
Brian Page.
Patty Gibbons.
Rob Ryder.
Greg Thomas.
A Doctor Voice.
Antland Productions, Uncle Roy.
Shayna Pennington Baird.
Martha Kahn.
Don Griffith.
Trey Mosley.
Diana Birdsall. And
Sandra
Manweller. Well, close enough. That
Take
was actually almost in
time
sync.
makes it harder.
It does. Hey, make sure you join our mailing list, too. Go to our website, vobs.tv, and click on sign up for subscribe to our newsletter, because that way you'll know who our guest is going to be this week, which is really cool. We also need to thank our amazing sponsors like Harlan Hogan's Voiceover Essentials,
Voiceover Extra,
Source Elements,
VOHeroes.com,
VoiceActorWebsites.com,
JMC Demos,
and WorldVoices.org, the industry association of freelance voice talent. Join today. Thanks to Jeff Holman for his work in the chat room tonight and in Facebook and in YouTube Live. and Sue Merlino for getting it done from wherever it is that she is, probably
in her lair.
office. In her lair. And Lee Penny for just being Lee Penny and for donating to our show. We really appreciate that. Stay tuned now for Tech Talk, and we're going to rack that up right now. But, this is not an easy business, and that's why we bring you all of these really cool people that know the business inside out, backwards, and upside down, and give you the opportunity to learn from them, and that's important. But when it comes to your audio, hey, if it sounds good,
it is good.
I'm Dan Leonard.
And I'm George Whittam.
And this is Voiceover
Body Shop,
or VO BS. See you in a sec. Don't go away. Yeah.
That leg cramp, Dan, you're right.
Oh, man. It's like, had to adjust the chair, it goes forward and backward on, just on the seat and stuff. And now it's okay. I had to
man.
rehydrate or sit in the right position. And so if you ever see me going and moving around like this, it's because I'm probably having a leg cramp.
Who was it, in the hamstring?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
boy. Those are the worst.
Oh, man. They call it a Charlie horse?
No, Charlie horse is front of your thigh. Like if somebody gives you a cross body block when you're running around the tight end or something. Anyway. Okay. It is time for Tech Talk. If you got questions for us, throw them in the chat room because we love to talk tech. We like talking to the people who are, the people in the business, but it's important to do that, because it's part of the business. But tech is what George and I really excel at. So are we ready, Ms. Merlino, to roll with Tech Talk? I see a thumbs up. And
I see a thumbs up. Yep.
Hey, it's time for Voiceover Body Shop Tech Talk. Tech Talk. Tech Talk.
Tech Talk?
Tech Talk. Tech Talk.
Am I supposed to
and
make
it's number
echoes?
85.
Yes, it is.
85 tech. More information than you could possibly shove in your brain in a lifetime. But somehow we've been able to do it over 85 shows.
And occasionally we answer the same question after
more than 2 years later. Yeah, exactly. If you got a question for us, throw it in the chat room right now, whether you're watching on Facebook Live or whether you're watching on YouTube or, from some satellite dish from somewhere, whether it's coming off the Webb telescope. Throw it in the chat room. I don't know if the Webb telescope has a chat room, but it probably does. Who knows? Probably has his own YouTube channel. Anyway, it's Voiceover Body Shop Tech Talk right now.
Voiceover Body Shop is brought to you by VoiceOverEssentials.com, the home of Harlan Hogan's signature products. Source Elements, the folks who bring you Source Connect, JMC Demos, when quality matters. VOHeroes.com, become a hero to your clients with award-winning voiceover training. VoiceActorWebsites.com, where your voice actor website shouldn't be a pain in the butt. VoiceOver Extra, your daily resource for voiceover success. And by World Voices, the Industry Association of Freelance Voice Talent. And now, here's your hosts, Dan and George.
Well, hello there. I'm Dan Leonard.
And I'm George Whittam.
And this is Voiceover
Body Shop,
or VO BS. Tech Talk.
Tech Talk.
Tech Talk.
Tech Talk.
Tech
Talk.
Talk. We are talking tech here on Voiceover Body Shop. And there's a reason that George and I talk tech, because guess what? That's what we do. Now, I'm a full-time voice actor and, a full-time president of World Voices and full-time husband and, dog owner and things like that. But I also do voiceover technical consulting, as does George, because it seems now, as there's more people in the business, some people are starting to get it.
Yeah.
But it's still a mystery to people trying to get into this business.
And I do start hearing the things we've been saying the last 11 years starting to echo around the web and in different forums. And and chat rooms. So
where do they get this stuff
it is
from?
getting around.
They got it from you and me. I mean,
yeah.
We've been figuring it out. You know, there are people that are experts in, you know, maybe they helped somebody build a studio or they built their own, found out how they did what they did wrong, and then like, oh, I got to fix that. So they'll go to about 20 different YouTube videos, try and figure it out.
Right.
Yeah. Or you could just work with one of us because we know how to do it. We've seen everything. I've put in studios in, you know, tile-laden apartments in Cairo, tiny little places in Paris. Every room is different. Every voice is different. Every situation is different. And it really takes somebody who knows what it's supposed to sound like to help you get it sounding the way it's supposed to sound like. And if you would like to work with us, you can work with either one of us. You can start with George. If you want to work with him, you would just go over to
GeorgeThe.tech. That's my place on the web, and I've got a big library of content on there that's totally free, by the way. There's a huge free resources area. You can start dabbling around, read the blog, and see what's going on over there. That will keep you busy for probably 3 or 4 months. Then when you're tired of that, you can you can actually book actual time with me on the website there. We can work one-on-one, or you can just send an audio sample for a sound check. Dan does sound checks, but he's got a funny name for him over at
homevoiceoverstudio.com. Yeah, the specimen collection cup is now at the top of the page. So when you go over to homevoiceoverstudio.com, it's right there, $25. I will analyze your audio to see if it's up to snuff. Does it sound what it's supposed to sound like? And if it doesn't, I will tell you exactly what's going on with it. You know,
it's the single most valuable service either of us provide.
Absolutely,
especially for the money.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. If you're going to find out if your sound is competitive, and I will go through the acoustics of the room. Are you using your microphone properly? Are you setting your levels? George, are you still amazed at how people just don't get the level setting thing yet?
Yeah. I still get files all the time where it's maybe taking up less than a quarter of the possible dynamic range, you know, and it's something that needs to be dealt with a lot. But that's why we still have businesses, Dan. That's why we still have jobs.
God. Yeah. You'll never be able to replace us with a computer. That's for darn sure. Anyway,
I hope not.
You've got lots of stuff going on in your tech update this week. And I see something familiar on the top there. Do tell.
I did. As usual, I was scraping the internet to find something that's
what
new.
That scraping sound was earlier. Right?
Yeah. I'm scraping the internet, trying to find something that's new, that's actually somewhat relevant. And it seems like a lot of the time, things that are new, that are relevant, and that aren't crazy expensive tend to be audio interfaces. And this would not be an exception. So the classic, now what I consider classic, has probably been around 7-8 years. The Yamaha AG03 Mark II is available. So
they've made improvements to it? What did they do?
I mean, I took a while to figure it out, and there's probably some that you don't really know about because they don't really list. I think because the AG03 isn't really marketed as a pro audio device, they don't really go into the minutia of like the THD, the total harmonic distortion, and all the different little minutia of the specs. So there might be some improvements there, but the things that I saw that were the most acute, that were obvious anyway, is that they've added a mute button. Now, I know that doesn't sound like that big a deal, but there wasn't one before. So it's really nice that you can cut the mic with the press of a button.
Right. It's important to cut your mic at a time, you know.
And when you need to cut it, you know why. You know why you want to cut the mic. You want to make sure it really is off and it has a proper mute button. It also, they added a alongside Bluetooth, which obviously is also new.
Yeah.
They added a TRRS phone connection. So that one cable connection that would go between your AG03 mixer with your smartphone that has a headset jack, if you happen to have one of those relics.
Yeah, they're like ancient history now.
Yeah, thanks to Apple. Or you have the little dongle that will plug into your phone that gives you a headset jack. Or That could also plug into the headset jack. That's on all the new modern PCs and laptops. They all have a headset jack. You can just plug one cable in and have a secondary connection just for Zoom and phone patch type situations. So it's nice that they've integrated that. It was already good, and now it's even better. And it's going to continue to be on my short list. It's going to actually, this is going to make it probably get it back onto my short list because it was getting a little long in the tooth. So it's nice to see a reboot. And I would love to get one and do some real world tests and see if it's cleaner, has lower noise, and if everything works just as well as the last.
Yeah.
Now, kind of tying into that is this notion of firmware or not to firmware. And what does all this mean? One thing I love about the AG03 is that it is this, like, I always use the word Goldilocks, the term Goldilocks. It's just right. It's this just right balance between a physical interface with knobs, buttons, switches, things that you can physically manipulate. Right. Yeah. A switch for loopback, that's unheard of. Nobody has a physical switch that will just turn on the loopback when you need it. I love that the AG03 does this. It's really, really unique. But so it's mostly driven in software, or I'm sorry, actual hardware, right? But the thing that's cool about it is it doesn't need an external control panel software to just work. It just plugs in and plays. It's plug and play, right? Works like your standard, if you think of it, a Scarlett 2i2 or something. But then it has the secret level you can unlock, and then it has onboard processing. So that I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what's new in the processing side of the AG03 Mark II. But it has the ability to have like a little bit of an EQ if you need it, a high pass filter that you can fine tune. That really makes it stand alone in a device like this. And again, it's not there if you don't need it. You don't have to turn it on. You don't have to even know how to work it. It just disappears if you don't need it. I love that about that.
Yeah, I like to. I had one, and then I broke the headphone jack on it, so I moved on to something else.
It wasn't built like a tank.
No, it wasn't. But it was great.
Yeah.
With the DSP program in it, the fact that you run it, it was like they were proprietary plugins for this particular unit,
right?
And it had compression on it, as you were saying, and an EQ. I am sure, since it's been about 6 or 7 years since they first came out with it, they have improved the DSP software on there.
Gotta imagine.
Now we gotta go out and buy one and check it out.
I know, another one to buy. Well, I also like that it also has a physical on-off button to turn those things on and off. I love devices that have a quick grab a knob, press the button adjustment. You don't have to have an iPad running okay, I'll show you.
All right.
And I'm going to talk about it. I love my PreSonus Revelator. I think it's the best. I really do love it. And right now, these things are $150. But to really get the most out of it, you have to have this thing running on an iPad or running on your screen. So now you've got this other whole user interface going on. That's a companion to the interface, to the device itself. And that's a pro if you are a pro producer or a streamer. It's a con if you're just an actor who wants to be able to do voice acting and keeping it simple. Because while there is a knob on the front, it's not doing just one job. It's doing 5. It's a gain knob, a mix knob, a headphone level, and a speaker level knob. And gain for 2 different mics. So really it does 5 distinctly different jobs. That's a lot to keep track of in real time. And this is where I'm going, I went on a little tangent, but the firmware and not firmware. Some audio interfaces don't require a software control panel layer to get them to do what they need to do, right? And I love that about that. I love that about the SSL2. I love that every knob is just right there. Every feature has one button that it does its job. I love that with the AG03 that it has just one knob and switch to do everything unless you unlock its secret level, of capability. And that's what makes the Revelator capable, but also a little intimidating. More capable because of the firmware. the ability to do and configure many different things that you can't see from the front panel. But that learning curve and that fear, is it going to work the way it did last time I plugged it in? And how many menus do I have to get into? That's a whole different animal. And I tend to be very careful about who I recommend interfaces for, or two, based on those two criteria. Do you like one knob or one switch or one button for every feature, or do you really want to be able to have more powerful capabilities? And that's kind of the difference between those two types of interfaces.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Oh, I say this all the time, Dan, especially all you guys with Apollos and stuff. And I'm like, yes, with great power. If you're using Reaper, oh my goodness, with great power, that is a very complex, elaborate recording software. You really need a lot of training to get the most out of it. In another piece of news, I mentioned the Apollo briefly. As you guys know, I've been setting up and tuning Apollo systems for so long, but I created a Facebook group just for voiceover. I wanted a voiceover group for the Apollo. Well, there's so many groups on Facebook that deal with the Apollo stuff from Universal Audio, and it was starting to wane in its activity. It was kind of withering away, I should say. And it really bugged me that all that intellectual property, all those searches, all those discussions, all that stuff is locked away in the Facebook silo. You can't get to it outside of Facebook. So finally, we're going to have a place in the uadforum.com just for us in voiceover, live streaming, and podcasting. All of us that use Apollos for non-music purposes, there's going to be a home for us. And I'm going to be the admin, and I'll be able to get more folks in there as mods. And I'm really, really glad about it, because folks that are using that hardware need a good place to go to get help, and they're not going to be able to necessarily get me in the clutch. They might need some real fast help, and there's going to be a community of people there to answer questions. So I know it's ironic, right? How many times did Dan and I say, don't get tech support by committee? Right? I get that this throws in the face of it, but the bottom line is there's still a very good use case for communities and forums and places for people to commiserate, share ideas, and just, kvetch. Did I use that word right?
Kvetch.
Fetch.
Kvetch. There's a V in it. Kvetch.
That means to bitch. That means to bitch, right?
Yes.
To complain.
At least that's what my mom would say.
A safe place to complain about the stuff you're using without other people going, well, you shouldn't have used that in the first place. It's like nobody wants to hear that. Anyway, so stay tuned. Hopefully by the time this actually is aired in a week, that will have finally gone live. So fingers crossed. So Dan, we're going to talk about some acoustic stuff, huh?
Yeah. We get this all the time because we are constantly talking to people about their home studios, especially a lot of people who are beginning. Mm-hmm. And here's a common phrase that someone will send me. They'll say, okay, I have a closet and I'm going to try and seal it up and make sure that I put a lot of soundproof foam in it. And I'm like,
yeah.
There is a difference between...
That's like a waterproof screen door.
Yes, between sound treatment and soundproofing. There are two things you are trying to accomplish. Anybody that's ever worked with me knows the first thing I lead off with is the most important thing in your home voiceover studio is the acoustical properties of the studio. And that consists of two things. Even though I say, there are three things that you got to get right. Part one has part A and part B. Part A is preventing exterior noise from coming into the area in which you record. That is not easy. In a home voiceover studio, if you are using a closet or are just in a room that it is literally impossible to get your noise floor down, like minus 70 without some assistance. You've got air conditioners, furnaces, neighbors, garbage disposals, toilets, all sorts of things that can go on in your place of residence, whether it's a house or an apartment. You got a highway next door. You have helicopters, going overhead. I had, 4 ospreys going over at 10,000 feet yesterday, and the studio, this is a soundproof studio. You could still hear it. It's just like the cavitation of those big rotors, So you want to be able to prevent exterior noise from reaching the inside. It doesn't take a whole lot. If you're in a closet and you seal yourself up in the closet, it will, if you can reduce the exterior noise by 7 to 10 dB, that's generally enough to make the space usable. Now, you can get a soundproof booth. As I like to say, if you have trouble with neighbors or the yard, the gardeners coming in and using a leaf blower, you could spend $6,000 or $7,000 on a new booth, or you could wait until they stop blowing leaves around. It's a pretty easy equation, but foam is not going to do anything about preventing that. The way you soundproof something is with mass and density. Using something like mass-loaded vinyl or concrete blocks, or using what we call decoupled construction so that the booth will actually move with the sound and absorb it and not let it go through. And
or all of the above.
Or all of the
if
above.
You really need it.
Yeah. So, if you are an established voice talent and you really need to have that silence, yeah, you might need a booth, but you don't buy the booth until you're actually there. You don't buy a booth to say, I'm going to be a voice actor, I'm going to buy a $10,000 booth. Not a good idea. It's not a great investment until you understand specifically what you're doing and how to become a great voice actor, which it's not going to happen overnight. So
yeah.
you can buy a booth, and that will prevent exterior noise. But you don't have to necessarily get a really expensive booth, just something that, if you build one yourself, if you can get a lot of that exterior noise out, that will help a whole lot. But part 2 of part 1 or part B, I think is the best way to put it, is acoustical treatment. What is it you're trying to accomplish inside the space in which you're recording? Most importantly, you don't want it to be reflective. And that means sounding like you're in a tube, you're talking into a box, you're in a cave. And there's a number of things that can happen there. You get bass reflex. Bass reflex is that sound of over-modulated lower frequencies, if you happen to have a very deep voice. One of my favorites, I had one last week. Somebody had a ringing noise in their booth. And I'm like, you'll have like a bell-shaped lamp in there or something like that. It's made of, no, I don't think so. I'm like, if you overproject, you can hear the ringing. Something metal in there is vibrating at just the right frequency of your voice, and it's coming back as a ringing sound. It's got to be, some people say it's got to be dead. Not necessarily dead. It has to sound like you're in a room, but you are not that far from the mic, and mic technique is an important piece of it. But if you're at the right distance from the mic and you're not over projecting, it should sound like just your voice. There shouldn't be any what we call slapback. There shouldn't be any echo. There shouldn't be any bass reflex. There are ways to fix that using acoustical foam, bass traps, things along those lines. But there's only one way to determine if you need that, and that's to talk to Mr. Whitterman, myself, and send us a sample so we can hear it. And we can say, okay, there is something going on there. And it takes 5 seconds for us to listen to this stuff.
This is the kind of thing that you can't plug it into a computer formula. And trust us, hiring a very fancy, expensive acoustician company ain't going to help you either, because they generally don't know how to tune acoustically these really weird little spaces that we all work in. I've talked to a lot of them. They don't know. A lot of this is a little bit of a black art. It's not like it's difficult to do. It's just that the knowledge isn't that common among even the industry. So we're going to get you the right advice.
You mean we're practitioners of black art?
You would think so. You would think so by the lack of books, the lack of chapters, the lack of topics. in all of the acoustic books that I keep wasting my money on because they never ever talk about the subject of a small ISO booth and acoustically tuning it. So that's what we do.
When you hear something that's not going on, that doesn't sound right, like if there's a node or something like that, how do you approach it? How do you find where to fix it?
Well, there's one way you can actually look up something that I was just saying a second ago that there's no computer calculators. There actually is something called a room mode calculator that will give you a little bit of information. It's going to tell you the frequencies at which that room will naturally resonate. Just like a bell has a specific frequency that it rings, a booth will have, well, unfortunately, not just one, but at least 3 frequencies based on the dimensions, length, width, and height, that it's going to ring. So we do have some ways to kind of predict, you're going to have some real problems at 125 hertz, So that means those 2-inch panels, they sure look good. They sure look like they're going to do it, but they're just not going to do it. We know we need to get thicker panels. Now we got to go to 4-inch panels, right? So that's the kind of thing that I will look for and also listen for. It also depends on the kind of mic you're using. It depends on how close it is. It depends where the mic is inside the space. I know, Dan, you've talked about that. Like you've moved a mic this way, that way, up, down, until you find this sweet spot in there where it doesn't seem to hear that ringing and resonance anymore.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, one of the cool things you can do if you're in a booth, or even in a closet full of clothes or something like that, is listen at different levels, whether you're sitting or standing or halfway or leaning or something along those lines. It's fascinating how the level of where your voice is at in that particular space, how it will resonate back. And that's how you find the sweet spot, at least height-wise, and then where's the best place to put the microphone inside that space.
Yep.
So, but it back to the thing about acoustics. One of the things that I look for, because I don't want people spending a lot of money when they're starting out. They try something that's simple. If you have a really, really quiet room, usually I will suggest something like a PVC booth, like 4 corners or the tri booth that Rick Wasserman and yourself designed. Yeah, it will work in a quiet room if you're already well isolated from exterior noise. Like if there's no exterior walls, which is great about a closet that's an interior closet, because the rest of the house or the apartment will prevent some of that noise coming through.
Yeah.
But if you have a quiet room, you can use a PVC pipe booth with moving blankets on it, or some higher quality sound absorbing blankets like Audio Mute or Producer's Choice or something along those lines. Those work great if you have a quiet room, and that will create a very, very quiet space and a very non-reflective space.
Yeah, free of bouncing and reflection.
Right, and that's what you want, and that's the kind of thing that you want to prevent, is that reflection. The noise, if you got a fan going somewhere, I can mute my mic and it's going to get rid of the thing. Or I could turn the air conditioning off. It's amazing.
Or you can get a really, really small fan like this one.
I can hear that. I'm turning the air conditioning back on because it's 92 degrees out there. It warms up
this little
quick.
fan on the one setting, it's not that it's completely dead silent, but it is quiet enough that you could probably do a lot of things with a little breeze, and it makes all the difference.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to get to some questions. Hey, you got plenty of time to get your questions about your home voiceover studio or something that you've always wanted to know, but we're afraid to ask because we weren't there with you. But now we are.
Or some new gear you heard about. What's our opinion?
Some new kind of thing, or new mic or something along those lines. You want us to talk about it? Throw it in the chat room. I know Jeff Holman is still in there taking down those questions, watching all your comments in Facebook and on YouTube, and we will get to them right after these important messages. So don't go away. We'll be right back here on VoiceOver Body Shop Tech Talk.
This is Ariana Ratner, and you're enjoying Voiceover Body Shop with Dan Leonard and George Whittam. VOBS.TV.
Inflated prices? Not at VoiceOverEssentials.com. Despite the nationwide inflation rate of over 8%, VoiceOver Essentials refuses to raise prices. In fact, they refuse to even say the I word. Their inventory is large on all their products, and they purchased them before the current economic conditions. It's simply wrong to increase profit as many retailers are doing right now. So Harlan & Company promised not to raise their prices during difficult times for everyone. They'll stay the course, steady and sure, flat and firm, solid and steadfast. Okay, enough. You get the point. Unfortunately, they're under the same inflationary pressures as everyone else, and they'll need to restock in the not-so-distant future. No doubt there'll be sticker shock for them and you. So right now is the time to order that Portabooth Pro or VO1A voiceover microphone and their VO 2.0 headphones. Fight inflation at VoiceOverEssentials.com.
Hey everybody, let's talk about Source Elements, the creators of Source Connect, and the winners of the Best Service Provider for Voiceover Award at the One Voice Conference. Congratulations, you guys. Obviously, you deserve it. Clearly, you're making a product that is well loved by the users out there that have to rely on it to produce voiceover recordings remotely, which is almost everything, right? Almost everything is being done remotely. And Source Connect facilitates that in a way that producers really enjoy. And the reason is because when that session is underway, it's as close to the actor as being in the room or in the booth at the facility as they're going to get, because that sound quality is extremely high. It's consistent, and the latency, believe it or not, can be controlled to be very low if you've got great internet connections. And many of us do now with fiber and a good hardwired network connection. You can really get very low latency on Source Connect, and they love that. It makes communication easier, and it makes consistent production happen on the fly. When the session's over, actors love it, because when that session's over, you're done. You're not editing, you're not trimming the files, you're not processing, you're not sending. It's done when it's done. So that's what's so great about Source Connect. If you feel like it's time for you, you're hearing more buzzes about it, your agent, maybe you have an agent, says it's time, go over and get a free trial at source-elements.com and get started on it right away so you can feel comfortable when that real session comes. Anyway, thanks for listening. More spots, and then we'll be back for your questions right after this.
Well, hello there. I bet you weren't expecting to hear some big-voiced announcer guy on your new orientation training for Snapchat, were you?
This is Virgin Radio. Well, okay, we're not that innocent.
There's jeans for wearing and there's jeans for working. Dickies, because I ain't here to look pretty.
She's a champion of progressive values, a leader for California, and a voice for America.
It's smart. It's a phone. It's a smartphone. But it's so much more. The files are ready. Don't forget to pick up the eggs. What time is hockey practice? Check out this song.
It's the end of the road for Rick.
It's just you and me, Rick.
When hope is lost.
The i8 from BMW. Who said saving the planet couldn't be stylish?
Hey, it's J. Michael Collins. Bet you think I'm going to try and sell you a demo now, huh? I think they speak for themselves. But I will give you my email. It's jmichael@jmcvoiceover.com. Now, if Dan will stop waxing his mustache for a minute, we'll get back to the show.
Before time began, there was VOBS.TV. Watch or else.
And we're back here at VOBS Tech Talk. And we love your questions. Still lots of room in the queue for a couple more questions as well from you guys about home voiceover studios, because that's what we like to talk about. I mean, when George and I get together, you know, aside from some of the personal crap, we talk about tech and, you know, what did you, I got to tell you about this client I had. I won't mention any names, but, you know, they had this or they had that, and, you know, which is why we have very similar philosophies on how to fix these things and getting things sounding right.
Yep. We know that we know it works. We've we've definitely kind of started to figure out what works, what doesn't, and it rarely does it differ much between Dan and I.
Yeah, no, because I'm older. I have more experience at life. You have more experience than tech. So we combine the two, and it's like, come on, be logical. Anyway, Jeff Holman asks, George, is the VOBS discount still in force? What's the coupon code over at GeorgeThe.tech?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's the VOBS Fan 10 code that gives you 10% off. And from past episodes, if you watch the end of the show, you'll see my prior discount codes, which are still also active. Those codes will still be active until the end of the year. But the current one is VOBS Fan 10.
All right.
And then the second part, what is the best mic to use for on-camera videos, like a self-tape? I'm using my iPhone 12 Pro Max as my camera. Dan's holding it in his hand.
This is a great little mic. This is the Go 2? Or what's it called?
I think it's the Rode Video Mic Go 2.
Mic Go 2. We used this last week when we were doing the interview at
Mojave.
At Mojave Microphones, and it worked great.
It did. It was really run and gun. We just plugged it in with that special cable. There is a cable that you want to buy that will directly interface the USB to your iPhone.
Slightly different than the regular iPhone Lightning cable, but man, we just plugged it right in. I'm like, we didn't even test it, and suddenly it was working.
Go. Yeah, that's right. It was definitely easy. For self-tapes, definitely keep it simple. I've heard of some pretty elaborate setups people are saddling themselves with. Don't go there. Keep it authentic. Keep it real. Make sure they can see you and hear you, but it doesn't have to sound like a studio. Don't overdo it.
Yeah, but I mean, there's if you use a shotgun mic, I mean, a 416 or any other shotgun mic along those lines works great, but you still have to have an interface with it.
Yeah.
If you're filming with your iPhone, which, as far as I'm concerned, is probably one of the best cameras out there.
It's the best cameras most anybody has in their house at this point. Is the iPhone camera.
Right.
It's for sure.
I mean, it's a big improvement over one of these guys. I mean, this thing was charged 5 years ago, and it still works, which is actually pretty amazing.
It's crazy. Like, I see cameras. I see photos now. All these bike races I'm in. People come and they're nice enough to share the photos they take, and they're taking them with big, expensive cameras with long lenses and all this stuff. Almost never do their photographs look as good as a lot of the iPhone photos that I've taken, because there's a lot more to taking a picture than just squeezing the trigger. And what iPhones are doing is a lot of computational photography. That's why the color balance is great. The exposure is great. Most of the time, the focus is dead on. There's a huge amount of processing that's happening the second you take that photo, and that all those other cameras require you to do all that in post, and a lot of people don't bother. So yeah, it's much, much easier to get great sounding video and audio from an iPhone than almost any pro camera. That's for sure.
Yeah. Question from Terry Briscoe. This is a very interesting question. It's a tech question. Good, because it's tech talk. I will be doing my first demo outside of my own studio, which is probably pretty good. Should I take my home studio mic to record on, or use the studio's mic, which is going to be most likely a 416, when I myself record on an MKE 600? My concern is being able to reproduce what I'm putting on the demo.
Ooh, good question.
It's a good question, and I think it's one of those you're way overthinking it questions. One, chances are, ask the studio if they have an MKE 600. Because, recording studios, it's not like they have one mic. They have what they call a mic locker. And they have lots of different microphones for lots of different things, especially if it's a regular recording studio that records bands or orchestras, they've got a whole line of different types of microphones, and will set it up the way you use it. Just ask them. I think that's pretty simple. So there's no need to yank your mic out of your own studio to do that. Now, is it going to be a big difference? I find. Now, George, you can argue with me about this, or you can Dan, you're absolutely right. the sound you have is the sound you have. And are you going to sound better on one mic versus another? When you're making a demo, it's recording your voice and it's capturing you as you exist. And if you have a good demo producer, they're going to do all sorts of things to it to make it sound like it's a demo, like it's real. They'll add compression and EQ so it will be consistent across the board. Now, if you book a gig off that demo and you're using your MKE 600, it's not going to really matter. It's what they're really looking for is, are you interpreting the copy the way the author and the advertiser or whoever wants it done? If it doesn't sound like garbage, then you'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't worry about what mic the demo is recording on, because the demo is going to be produced. The audio you're sending out for auditions shouldn't be produced. Like if you're trying to sound just like you did on that demo, it's not going to make sense in the context of an audition. It's going to sound overproduced. It's going to sound too loud, too shiny, too bright, too whatever. And so it's not a bad idea. I think your heart is in the right place. It's definitely more about, can you act and can you be directed to get that performance that you've done on the demo? Not so much about, can you reproduce the recording quality, I think, of what's on that demo. So it's a good question. Plus the MK600 is a shotgun and it sounds a lot like a 416. So yeah, I think Dan nailed it. I would say I would agree completely. The second question is about the update to Isotope RX10. Have you tried it yet? Well, no, nobody's tried it yet, because unless you're Don Barnes, who helps develop their software, no, you're not. We're not going to have it yet. I just looked online and they're saying it's so early that we're not even sure what they're actually going to be doing to make our RX10 newer or better or whatever. So sorry, it's a little early. Maybe in a month from now or so. I'm not sure the release date, but they release always in the fall, I think. Maybe we'll have had a chance. I know that when from RX8 to RX9, there was basically no marked improvement for a voiceover actor.
I wonder what they changed then.
There was little that had anything to do with what voice actors need. The mouth to click was the same.
Right.
The voice to noise was the same. The chains and all that stuff worked the same. 7 to 8, there was a big improvement because chains could be imported, and effects chains could be made and imported easily. And they did make some real improvements under the hood, but I don't know what they're going to do in 10. If they have a perfect reverb or something that will change the acoustic character of your recording space convincingly, or get rid of your booth sound, okay, you'll have my attention. They certainly got Waves Clarity VX, which is this crazy noise reduction plugin to compete against. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got Adobe Audition, you don't really need RX7. RX7 was really designed, I think, initially to fix vinyl records.
Yeah.
Like
restoring audio from bad
right.
recordings from 20, 50, 80 years ago. Yeah.
Right. So if you're and the fact of the matter is, even if you're recording in, somewhat of a marginal space, you don't want to use a hand grenade to fix it. It's RX7 or RX, the isotope stuff. It's fabulous. It really is amazing stuff. But, my philosophy is everything is physical. If you get it right physically up front, you don't necessarily need that kind of stuff. But it's good to have, and it's fun to have around, and it's good. It will help you learn a little bit more about audio. A de-reverb would be really great. But, of course, if you're recording in a really reflective space, I would suggest a different space. In podcasting and stuff like that, it's like those tools are really designed for fixing interview audio and things where it's really critical to be able to hear the other person. But for single voiceover stuff, I tend to think it's a bit of overkill. Not to say that it's a bad program. It's amazing technology. And if you know how to use it, and you know how to use it subtly and seamlessly, I think that's a good way to go. Mm-hmm. You get the question from Jonathan Grant.
He says, "Hey, Jeff, George and Dan's preferred filler for cloud panel, OC703 or mineral wool. So yeah, what's the best acoustical liner to put into an acoustical cloud panel in the ceiling? OC703 is a classic. It's been used in tons and tons of studios. To me, mineral wool is sort of the next evolution in terms of product because it's less toxic.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the formaldehyde glue that bonds it together. So I tend to lean on mineral wool, or rock wool is the brand name, one of the brand names of it. There's others, but yeah, that's
what
the
I
big
use
one.
when I build a cloud. You know, you just got to be careful with it because, like fiberglass, it has tiny little microscopic things that will itch. So
yeah, and it
wear
will float
gloves,
into the air. Yep.
Yeah, or an environmental suit, or a painter's suit or something like that when you're working with it to create the clouds. Clouds are actually quite easy to build.
Mm-hmm.
And they can make a huge difference. Say if you've got a closet that you're recording in that's too big or is really, really high, by putting in a cloud, you are reducing the acoustical size of the room, not the actual physical size of the room, but it will diffuse and absorb the sound that is above it, so you're not like reverbing like it's like a guitar.
Yeah, it also gives you a bass trapping effect too, usually, because you've created this gap above it where lower frequencies will tend to be collecting more often, and the panel can do a pretty effective job of controlling some of the bass too.
Absolutely.
Just make sure, what Dan was saying, there's fibers in this stuff that can get into the air. Absolutely make sure there's nothing left open. So like if you've got a panel hanging from the ceiling with this stuff on top, make sure you put a layer of fabric over the back to trap it inside.
I've been using weed block.
Oh yeah,
which works really, really well.
It's black, right?
It's black. It's flexible. And it covers it up with the staple gun, and boom, and it works really, really well.
Cool.
And I've been building those for people lately, and it makes a huge difference in closets and stuff
really
like
does.
that. Catherine Jade Jarvie asks, assuming I'm comfortable and able to perform as usual, is there such a thing as too small for a booth? I'm immediately thinking of a very small booth of someone we both know very well, where you just sort of squeeze in there. But she makes it work. So,
was that Lori Allen?
It would have been the one. Yes.
I can say that because she no longer is in that tiny booth.
Oh, good.
Now she's in a larger closet. It's still a closet, but it's still. She actually has elbow room finally. That booth, I never thought it could sound good as small as it was and narrow it was. But sometimes just the right amount of paneling in the right places, you can get away with some very small spaces. You're just going to be uncomfortable in long recording sessions. Just there's no two ways about it. You're just not going to be comfortable.
Yeah.
You're going to run it. You're going to get warm or hot. You're going to use up you're going to use up oxygen, and worse, you're going to actually expel too much carbon dioxide in there, and it's going to get really stuffy and all this. So yeah, that's where when things get too small, it's really
that's what doors are for. And this is the best ventilation system.
Opening a door quickly will let the carbon dioxide out and the oxygen in, and yeah, exactly.
That'll help. But a small booth, it can work. We tend to like to think that you should probably have something, at least 3.5 by 3.5 or 4 by 4 by whatever height, reduced with a cloud. You've got to be able to. It's got to breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
The smaller the booth, the more the more complex it can be, because you can't over project, because it will bounce right back, even if you have a lot of treatment there.
And you can't move around. Like, you can't physically gesticulate. You can't work the microphone that much because you don't have that much space to work.
Right.
If you're being directed and they say, can you step back 6 inches from the mic? And you're like, I'm already against the wall, Yeah, they do get too small.
Yeah, and also, and my technique is different in a small booth. I mean, we've got these rules. One is, first off, if you're in a really tiny booth, just a fist away. If it's a good sized booth, 4x4, something like that, thumbs up. If you're in a slightly larger room or in a bigger room, George, you developed the thing. It's like you've got to be farther away, so it's like fist, thumbs up, mahalo.
Yeah, those seem to be the three
works.
different distance ranges that work. Like I'm in a bigger room, it's just an office, and I can get this far away, and it still sounds pretty present. You get a little bit of reflection, but it's still workable. So yeah, but most people can't get that far away from the mic without causing problems.
Yep. Max Goldberg asks, can you put a Mac Mini SSD in the booth to eliminate fan noise? The new Mac Minis, I don't notice it.
Mac Mini SSD.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a Mac Mini with an SSD. They all have SSDs.
Oh yeah, they all have SSDs. Yeah, every Mac Mini has solid state drives, and the M1s. Maybe that's what you're thinking of. The new silicon chip M1s.
Yeah, it might be the M1 or the M2.
They're not fanless, but they are really quiet, really, really quiet fans, like crazy quiet. So I consider it almost fanless because I've never ever heard the fan from my M1. Have you, Dan? Have you ever heard the fan noise from it?
I've never listened. I mean, sometimes I might hear there's a rumble somewhere, and it's like, is it under the desk? No, and it's coming from somewhere else other than my computer.
Yeah,
now the MacBook Air, deadly silent. There's not a sound that comes out of there.
No fan
at all.
Yep.
So you can a Mac Mini SSD with an SSD drive in it you're not going to get the whirring sound of a mechanical drive.
But I'll tell you, the older one though, the Intel from 2018 and older, you will hear the fan. They're not silent. Those fans do spin up quite a bit, and they can be quite noisy. An older Mac Mini can sound like just sort of like a hairdryer running constantly. Maybe not quite that loud, but just like that. Because I have a 2011 in my near the TV that I use as like a server and to watch old videos, home videos. And when that thing's on for a day or so, I just notice, what's that? Oh yeah, that Mac Mini is still on. It's just going all the time, constantly. So definitely not silent.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to. I've got all these Macs sitting around. I mean, I've sold a couple of them, but now they're sitting around. Maybe the battery's dead on them or something. But if you can fix them. The great thing about Macs is you can just keep using them for all sorts of things,
Yep.
Have it playing video on Halloween in front of your house.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't ask me why I thought of that. But you get the question from Jonathan Grant. Yes.
All right. Jonathan says, I record in a desk chair, a bar stool, and a standing height, depending on what I'm reading. I have solid wall treatment at all heights, but wondering about how to ensure tuning of the cloud for those different heights. The worst case is always the closer you are to the ceiling, right? So if it sounds good when you're standing, it's going to sound great when you're seated. So I would not worry about tuning the cloud for seated position. I only find that it's a real concern as you get closer and closer to the ceiling. That's been my experience. Dan, how about you?
I just had this bizarre thought about how you could do this. And this is because I'm a sailor.
Does it involve pulleys and ropes?
Pulleys, and it involves pulleys and cleats and stuff like that. If you can suspend it and have a cleat on the side and know the settings for those different things, you just raise it and lower it.
It would be an interesting experiment. Not something I've done where made an adjustable hanging height cloud and played around with it. So interesting idea. It could be done if you're really motivated. I know Jonathan Grant is because I've seen his studio. His studio is really, really well designed. He's put a lot of thought
all you got to
into
do
it.
is go over to Ace Hardware, get some rope and some pulleys, and you can. That's amazing what you can do. I've built lots of shades, Roman shades and stuff like that. If you understand that technology, that would be nothing. That would be an easy thing to do. But
he's like, OMG, I'm designing that now to follow my
God, no.
sit-stand desk, because I think he has an electric lift desk. So.
Well, just make it, attach the chair and raise that up that way.
That's awesome.
Well, great questions, folks. That's the kind of stuff we like to get. And as you can see, George and I just love talking about it because it's like, how would we do that?
We love the crazy ideas people come up with too, and we just makes us scratch our head.
Yeah,
Should it be done? Does it help? Would you bother?
Can I put
Tell us how it goes,
over
Jonathan?
my head?
Yeah, tell
we
us
want
how
to
it
see
goes.
pictures when you
Yes,
actually
pictures,
do that.
proof.
All righty. Well, another hour gone, sort of. Again, if you have a question for us at any time, you can write to us at vobs@vobs.tv. And if you write to us, if you write your question down long before we record this show, it gets priority. It'll be number one in the queue. So, but you can, and of course you can always, be here live and ask your questions live. And that's the best part about it. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to tell you about what's coming up in just a minute. So don't go away.
This is the Latin lover narrator from Jane the Virgin, Anthony Mendez, and you're enjoying Dan and George on the Voiceover Body Shop.
Hey there, it's David H. Lawrence the 17th. I teach a curriculum called VO Heroes Pro. Close to 40 classes on voiceover, performance, the business, the technology, the mindset. And with all those courses, I'm sure there are still things that I don't teach. And I'd love to know, if you wouldn't mind helping me out, what you'd like to learn. Is there something that has always puzzled you about our business, or something you just don't know about, or something that you wish you had a better take on? Go to voheroes.com/survey. There's a one-question survey waiting for you, and that is, what would you like to know? I'd love to teach it. So, voheroes.com/survey. That's voheroes.com/survey. Let me know what I can teach you, and I thank you.
In these modern times, every business needs a website. When you need a website for your voice acting business, there's only one place to go. Like the name says, voiceactorwebsites.com. Their experience in this niche webmaster market gives them the ability to quickly and easily get you from concept to live online in a much shorter time. When you contact voiceactorwebsites.com, their team of experts and designers really get to know you and what your needs are. They work with you to highlight what you do. Then they create an easily navigable website for your potential clients to get the big picture of who you are and how your voice is the one for them. Plus, VoiceActorWebsites.com has other great resources, like their practice script library and other resources to help your voiceover career flourish. Don't try it yourself. Go with the pros. VoiceActorWebsites.com, where your VO website shouldn't be a pain in the you-know-what.
You're still watching VOBS?
Yes, you are.
Apparently we are. We're all watching.
We can't avoid it because we're actually doing it. So we got to watch it and pay attention to what's going on here. It's amazing the things that can go on while the show is going on. And there's, over the 11 years we've been doing the show, sometimes it's some of the strangest stuff. To give you an idea how long ago it was, the wife is yelling upstairs when we were back in Buffalo, Jacob needs to go to bed. Can you stop your show? Of course, he just had his 25th birthday, so to give you an idea how long ago that was.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So anyway, next week on this show, you're not going to be here. You're going to be flying off to some other place.
I'm going to be in London, by the way. So anybody watching this, if you're in the London region and you'd like to say hi, hit me up. Let's try to coordinate something.
Hey, Governor, you're going to be here?
Yeah, I'm going to try to find I'm sure there's pubs around. I hear London has pubs. Find a pub, and maybe we can hang out a bit and have a wee chat over a wee chippy. Fish and chips, of course, or a pint. I would love that. Hit me up. Let me know. Send an email to george@georgethe.tech if you are in the London area, and maybe we can get together. Or better yet, maybe I could even come to your studio.
Ooh.
Let me know.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we will be having a guest co-host, and I have a plan. I think it's going to be somebody with lots of fun. It should be great. And George is going to be so angry that he wasn't here.
I know. Gosh darn it.
Anyway, we
Or
need to
FOMO.
thank. Yes. We need to thank our amazing donors of the week, like Robert Leadham,
Stephen Chandler,
Casey Clack,
Jonathan Grant,
Tom Pinto,
Shelley Avellino,
Greg Thomas,
a Dr. Voice,
Antland Productions. Yeah, I had a picture of me in front of the Arc de Triomphe wearing my Antland Productions tie-dye shirt. I sent that off to Uncle Roy. So
he must have loved that.
I'm sure he did.
Martha Kahn.
949 Designs, our good friend Lee Pinney.
Yes. Christopher Epperson.
Sarah Borges.
Philip Sapir.
Brian Page.
Patty Gibbons.
Rob Ryder.
Shauna Pennington Baird.
Don Griffith.
Trey Mosley.
Diana Birdsall.
And Sandra Manwiller.
All righty. Hey, if you need help with your home studio, you've come to the right place. You can come to homevoiceoverstudio.com, where you'll find me and all the stuff that I have. Or you can go over to
GeorgeThe.tech. And if you want to check out the webinar I'm teaching on Twisted Wave coming up in September, you can sign up for that at /webinars. And there's a free raffle copter thing you can do to get a free raffle pass. And of course, I still do have working coupon codes. The current one is VOBSFAN10 for 10% off.
All righty. We need to thank our sponsors for whom this show would not be possible, and they've been with us all these years. We really appreciate it. Harlan Hogan's Voiceover Essentials.
Voiceover Extra.
Source Elements.
VOHeroes.com.
VoiceActorWebsites.com.
JMC Demos.
And worldvoices.org. Go over there, check out what we do over there at World Voices. Thanks to Jeff Holman getting all those questions in there and being patient over in the chat room. We really appreciate that. Yep. Our tech director, Sue Merlino. She just gets it done every week.
Not worthy.
Yeah, no, we're not, actually. And Lee Pinney, just for being Lee Pinney. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Guys, voiceover is a very complex business. You know, you got to be able to perform, and you've got to understand the business of the business. And we don't want you to overthink your audio. The fact of the matter is, if you get it sounding right, if you got all the acoustics right, if you listen to what we tell you about getting it sounding right, it will sound good. And if it sounds good,
it is good.
I'm Dan Leonard.
And I'm George Whittam.
And this is Voiceover
Body Shop,
or VOBS. Tech Talk.
Tech Talk.
See you next week.
Bye, everybody.